Hi everyone, I'm Assistant Professor Julie Martinez-Hayes. I will be demonstrating how to create a child domain using the GUI in a server environment for Cengage MindTap. In particular, I'll be using MindTap Lab 4.2 for our course, but any lab environment that has a domain controller and a standalone server will work just fine. You can do this with domain member servers as well. It just happens that our scenario is a standalone server. Server 2019 in this case. Okay, so if you haven't started your servers, go ahead. I'll just pause the video here, and after you've booted the domain controller, pull up the server called PLAB-SA01. SA standing for standalone. So SA01 is the server we'll be working on to add the necessary files needed, and we'll be creating a child domain on this server. Okay, here we go. The very first thing we're going to do is to first of all, we're going to prove. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is just check the server status to ensure it is a standalone server. We do this by going to the server dashboard, clicking on the local server on the left side, and the work group will either show as the domain name or a work group if it's just a work group. So this is proving that it's a work group. If your lab asks to take a snip here, this is what you need. You also want to prove that you're on which server you're on. So include the server name whenever you take snips. All right, the next thing we'll do is add features. We have to add some services onto this box before we can upgrade it to a domain controller. Go to Add Roles and Features. We're going to look at Active Directory Domain Services. Come along. Confirm that you want to install services on this box. Active Directory Domain Services. In this case, we will be include all the features that are there by default. Make sure the box for Include Management Tools is available. That gives you the console. And make sure also that DNS is enabled. All right, we're accepting all the default features that go with these roles: Active Directory Domain Services and DNS. Hit Next. We'll hit Next about 4 times. I think that was 3. Okay, on Confirm Installation Selections, check the box that gives it permission to restart if needed. It's just warning us that it's not going to prompt us, it's just going to go restart. Yes, we want it to automatically restart. It gives us a list of just what's going on and what's getting installed, and we hit Install. At this point, we can pause a bit and wait. Technically, you can close this window because you'll be able to watch the installation with this flag notification over here. I'm going to just keep this open for a little bit. So you do have a close button here, or you could just watch the install. So you can pause the video here. I'll be pausing my recording, and I'll start it when we're closer to finish. Pause. Okay, at this point we have the features and roles, all the software needed to do what we need to do installed, and we can hit close. There should be a yellow flag up in the notification window. This yellow, sorry, it's not a yellow flag, it's a yellow triangle with an exclamation point, and it is notifying us that there's additional information here It's also, what the key thing is notifying is that we've installed the roles and features to create a domain controller, and it's telling us, okay, we are ready to promote this to a domain controller. So we're not done. It is not a domain controller yet. It just has some software on it that allows it to happen. If for some reason you did not get this yellow triangle, use this circular refresh button. That should refresh the window, refresh the notifications, and if you give it a minute, it should show this yellow triangle with exclamation point. The worst case scenario is that you would reboot PLAB SA01, or I call it PLAB SA01. Just reboot this VM and this yellow triangle should appear, allowing you to take the next step and promote it to a domain controller. So we're going to go promote this right now. At this point, we have completed the file installation for Section 2, and we're on to Section 3. Section 3 is just noticing that there is a yellow triangle, confirming that it's there. Okay, Section 4 is working with this and making sure that this notification has a hyperlink. We're ready to go and confirm that it's ready. Section 5 is where we actually do the work of creating the child domain. So let's promote this and keep going. There are several options on this screen to create a domain controller. We can add it as an additional domain controller to the existing domain, which is called practicelabs.com. We can add a whole new domain to practicelabs.com, which is what we're going to do, or we could create a whole new forest from scratch that has nothing to do with practicelabs.com. Since this was a standalone server, we can create a whole brand new domain called Julie Test Domain. You know, this could be your practice domain. This is what you would do if you create a server from home at home, because honestly, you won't even get these other options because you don't have a domain created yet. You're starting from scratch building a domain, and that is New Forest. What we will choose is the middle option, New Domain to Existing Forest. This domain type is a pre-selected forest, child domain. We give it the parent domain. If we're not sure of the name, you can hit the select box and look around. If you don't know if it's .com, .edu, it's going to ask you for credentials. The credentials to continue involve using Practice Labs administrator account. So the domain administrator account. All passwords are capital W0RD. I typed that out of habit at this point. I hit the select button. It asked us for credentials to prove we could get there. And it confirmed we have a domain called practicelabs.com. Our new domain name will be your own first name. So I'm going to type one. Oh, excuse that. That is my timer, which I should not have on anymore. I have a Pomodoro timer. It helps me work. Let's close that. Okay, sorry about that. We have our new child domain. It's going to be called your own first name. We have the parent domain listed. Here's the last trick. You want to make sure, even hit change if you need to ensure that the credentials are newly installed. If you have not typed this part in a box yet, the credentials field might be empty, but just in case, even when it's populated and you're adding an additional domain controller to a domain, it might already be populated. It tends to work best if you hit change and retype the credentials. Practice Labs Administrator, capital PASSW0RD, and hit next. We're going to get several screens after this. Sorry about the fuzzy graphics. I'm actually replacing the monitor in about 2 weeks. It should be here. Okay, I do have a couple of questions in the lab in case you're just doing this for fun. One question is, why is the domain functional level Windows Server 2016 when our domain controller and our current server are both Windows Server 2019? That is the question. The other next question is, what can you do to change this to Windows Server 2019? We're going to accept the default capabilities. We're going to keep the global catalog. Because we are a child domain, somebody has to have the global catalog for the child domain. DNS is already installed. We're keeping that there. We cannot have an RODC until we have at least one real domain controller. And we're going to create the recovery password. This is Directory Services Restore mode. If we had to restore Active Directory, we'd have to put in a password to do so. We're just going to keep it the same as all the other passwords in this lab. Capital PASSW0RD. It kills me that we use a password that's so simple. Okay, and we hit next. We are going to create the DNS delegation. We hit next. It's going to find the NetBIOS name for us, so if you just pause here and be patient, you might see a little blue bar going by that it has looking. It should populate with your first name. Once it shows up, hit next. There's some patience involved here. You've got default file locations. Please notice where the files are going. Sysfile, what goes into Sysfile. Think about what these paths are so that if someone asks you where do the logs go, you know exactly what that partition's called. It's not a partition, it'll be a share. Where the folder location is. Sysfile is a share. You can get there. It's built in. But in case you need to know where is the database, where are the logs, where are the login scripts, that would be in Sysfile. Sysfile is also where group policy goes. Alright, you're going to get review options that summarizes the whole thing. Please note in the lower right corner of this window there is a box called View Script. If you look at this script, you're going to get the PowerShell for the whole thing. All that you are installing, all the choices you made, the domain name, that it's a child domain, and you can script this out. So if you need to redo this, you can script it by using the script that's provided. Hit next. Now it's going to check prerequisites, things it will look for, such as is the server getting an IP from a DHCP server, or is the IP hard-coded? You'll get warnings that you should not have an IP that's from DHCP. It will check for DNS locations and warn you that it's not available. It'll see, here's a warning that at least one physical adapter does not have a static IP. These are all warnings. Please notice that if you scroll to the bottom of this, you get a green check mark that shows all prerequisite checks passed. You'll also see this in the upper left, just under the word prerequisites check. If I can say this. Prerequisites check. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, it just confirms it passed and lets you hit the install button. So go ahead and hit install. It's going to let you know that something was changed. At this point, I'm probably going to pass. Or, sorry, I'm not going to pass. I'm going to pause the video. Boy, I need another cup of coffee. Okay, you're about to be signed out. And note that when this server signs out, it will disconnect your remote desktop session. Because with MindTap the default is a remote desktop session, you'll get disconnected. So you see this wonderful screen that folks tend to panic about and should not. There you have two choices here. You can be patient and then hit the reconnect button in the upper right that has a little reconnect to device mouse over. It looks like a lightning bolt. But servers take a long time to boot up, so you probably won't see much when it boots up. The other option is to switch to console mode. It's the second icon in. The mouse over is toggle between console. Wait, let me get the actual mouse over. Toggle between RDP and console modes. So you can toggle between your remote session and your console session. The console session tends to be a smaller window, but is more accurate in terms of what you see going on at the server. You'll see things like apply computer settings, applying group policy, etc. Now this server, SAO1, was not a member of a domain before, so it's just now getting the domain policy from the domain controller DC01. So there's some extra steps going on. Not only are we creating a child domain, we're creating a domain controller, and we're joining a domain, a parent domain, all in one step. So it takes a little bit longer. You can pause here, and I'll let you know when we're back. At this point, we are at section... Alright, we're finishing section 5. Almost there. At this point, I wanted to show you that my server looks frozen, and to be totally honest, it just could be that the display is frozen. So if you close this or reconnect or switch back to the other view setting, toggle, let's see if I could toggle this on, or reconnect, and if not, you can close the window here, go back to the server, it's in here somewhere. Oh, MindTap. Sorry. You shouldn't look at my fish issues. And if we get back to the MindTap server, hopefully it didn't fall asleep on us. That would stink. It normally doesn't have the kind of delay that would allow us to, it would, kick us out of our lab. But since it's a Monday, it might be busier than usual. Oh, great. I might have to start over the entire stinking video. Nah. I'm just going to wait. I'll pause the video, I'll reload it, and I'll get back to where we were. One thing you can do while your SAO1 server is rebooting and you're waiting for it to come back up is go back to the domain controller, DC01, go to Tools and Active Directory Users and Computers, ADUC, ADUC, and look at this domain controller's container. So if you look at the domain controller's container, you might expect to see both DC01 and SAO1, but SAO1 is not a domain controller for PracticeLabs.com. So it's only going to show the single domain controller there is. What you can do is right-click on Practice Labs and say Change Domain, so that you want to go look at a different domain. Hit the Browse button, and if there's a plus sign next to PracticeLabs.com and you can expand it, you might see your own domain name there, which means the domain exists. So that far has completed. And you can hit OK. And if you go back to, it's not quite there. It cannot be contacted. So it's the server's still coming back up. Once it comes back up, you can look in the Domain Controllers tab from DC01, since it's the parent domain, and just look at the domain controllers to see who's there. That's one thing to do. Otherwise, be patient. Okay, our server has come back up. I'm going to try to hit Control-Alt-Delete to log into it. Come on. I thought I did. Let's try it again. It's a little slow today. It's usually a lot quieter on the weekends. Plus, the World Cup is on right now, so folks aren't watching. I mean, folks are watching their country's games and not worrying about their labs. There we go. Boy, that took way too long. Okay, it's defaulting to the administrator account, the domain administrator account on the Julie domain. So just type in your password. Oh boy, my phone, hello. There we go. Let's see, it's taking forever to acknowledge that I typed in the password and hit enter, which is a scary sign. Occasionally I will go back to the MindTap instructions just to hit next or previous, just to make sure it's awake. Whoops, I already got to the questions. Let's go back to our lab. Okay, I'll have to try this slower since it's not responding to my keyboard very well. P, A, sorry about this. This is very unusual to have things so slow, so painfully slow. Now that it's back up, go to the local server tab. Again, you want to check its domain membership, and you should see the julie.practicelabs.com domain. There we go. It's in your domain. Now go to the Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers. First of all, I want to point out something. Two things actually. First of all, we're at section 6 that we logged on to our own domain, and section 7 is actually checking the local server. So this part of going to local server and checking the domain membership is part of section 7, but this does not confirm it's a domain controller. It just confirms that the server named PlabSAO1 is a member of the child domain Julie in the domain practicelabs.com. Okay, so to check who are the domain controllers, we have to go to Active Directory Users and Computers. So use Tools, go to ADUC, and we will open the domain controllers container just to confirm who our domain controllers are. There we go. So this is the proof you really need that it's a domain controller. I believe your lab has 2 SNPs. This is one of them, that domain controllers and SAO1 that confirms. You can get this same Active Directory SNP from DCO1 if you change the domain to julie.practicelabs.com. To change it to your first name and look for the domain controllers container. Should show the same information. It also confirms that it's a global catalog server and it happens to be in the first site name. There are no other sites. It's a default site. Okay. The other SNP you needed, I kind of brushed right by, and that is confirming the local server options, the local server settings on your dashboard. So the server dashboard is going to prove that the computer called PlabSAO1 is in the domain julie.practicelabs.com. When you take the SNP, include the VM name, please, so I know that you're on SAO1, to show, and I get to see local server. For the other one, for Active Directory, honestly, it's okay to show it from DC01 because I get to see the same information. I need to see the domain name that says firstname.practicelabs.com, and I see the domain controller's container, and I get to see the name of the server that's in it. So you've done the lab. This is big. This is very likely on the skills exam, and I can't go too much from there. You're done. This is it for the whole end of the lab. Congratulations. Have a good day. Bye-bye.